Hello and welcome to a Monday night edition of the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. I'm Pat Burnham and joined as always on Monday night by former FSU offensive lineman Mark Salva. And as we have the last couple of Mondays or Tuesdays or Thursdays by Bob Ferrante and Kurt Weiler. And guys, here to talk a little bit about Florida State's loss to Miami this past weekend. Obviously, some breaking news last night on the recruiting front. We'll have more of that with Fish tomorrow and Nick, as CJ Wiley decommitted. And then obviously Mike had his press conference today along with the coordinators, and Kurt and a couple of the other writers asking some very specific and really tough questions for this part of the year, given what we're used to at Florida State. So we'll get into a little bit of all that. But guys, how's everybody doing?
Yeah.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Come on, it's like Aaron Rodgers said, I've been in the darkness, and you've got to go in there and make it peace with it. Mark, you got to make peace with your time in the darkness with Florida State football.
Yeah.
Come on.
I have no control over the situation.
The quarterback poet,
Aaron
Rodgers, is giving us perspective on all of this.
All I can control is my response.
Yeah.
I'm not taking Mr. Darkness Retreat's perspective.
Well, if you had some ayahuasca, whatever it is he takes, you'd probably feel different. What is that thing? What is that crazy drug he takes?
Ayahuasca, yeah.
Ayahuasca. Okay. Well, guys, you guys were in Miami on Saturday night, probably wishing you were on ayahuasca, as Florida State falls 36-14 to Miami to fall to 1-7. We have not had a chance to talk to you guys. Obviously, Kurt and Bob's game stories and op-eds and editorials are on theosceola.com, but and we've got some stuff coming across today as well. But kind of what was y'all's take from down in South Beach? What it looked like from your standpoint? And I know we've all had a chance to kind of go back and rehash the game. Just kind of want to get y'all's second thoughts as well.
Yeah, I don't know if this is rational or defeatist, but I went into the game, again, looking more for youth development, less looking at the scoreboard, knowing I think we knew what the result was going to be unless you turn over Cam Ward, unless you get some of those big explosive plays, a special teams, kick return, punt return, something like that. I think we knew what was going to happen. The player development is going to happen. It's just there's no easy button. There's no easy button to expedite that. It's going to take a lot of time. You're playing so many true freshmen, redshirt freshmen on offense. So it's frustrating. It's frustrating to watch a rivalry game and Florida State loses by 22. But I think the players need this time on the field. And I've been watching and asking for player development for a month. It's what I'm watching in November. I'm less concerned about wins and losses moving forward. I know people don't want to hear that, but I'm watching player development more than anything. And it's tough to watch a lot of times. Like Mike Norvell calling that passing game various adjectives. It was not fun to watch, but that's what it is right now.
Yeah, it's hard to call it a passing game when the quarterbacks are on the run, running for their lives. And listen, I don't know what the pressure count was on Miami, but when I went back through my rewatch, I mean, those two guys did not have a chance when they were back in the pocket. I mean, it was absolutely listen, some of that's growing pains, and some of it's three older guys that aren't playing very well. So, but yeah, Kurt, what were your second thoughts after your initial thoughts on Saturday night? Then obviously you've had 48 hours to kind of digest it and look at a little bit of it again. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Bob, with we saw the youth movement ramp up, which was encouraging. I mean, the first targets for Luane McCoy, BJ Gibson, and Elijah Moore, I think was encouraging. I think all of them also had a drop. And I'm not going to say – I think some of those were graded fairly harshly, I'll say, for the record. I don't think Elijah Moore drop was a double coverage ball in a really tight window that he's getting hit. Like, I don't really put a ton on him, but I think seeing them was nice. I mean, I think the thing is, it's tough because I thought Miami would put up more points. I thought it would really get away from Miami, or if it didn't get away because Miami really took its foot off the gas, and Miami didn't do that. I think, frankly, the Florida State defense did a good job taking away Miami's explosives, which has been a lot of their offense. I think it sure felt like Miami's message to Cam Ward was, if the explosives aren't there, throw it away. Don't put the ball at risk because we think we can run the ball on this team. And sure enough, they did. I mean, they averaged a bunch of yards per carry. They did a good job staying ahead of the chains. When they didn't stay ahead of the chains, they converted some third downs that no defense should be allowing. So I think you could praise some. I mean, it's the lowest yards per play, the lowest points Miami's had this year. But at the end of the day, they scored on 7 of their 8 drives before kneeling out the game. So it's hard to put too much praise on the defense when Florida State's defense only forced 1 punt /turnover on downs.
Yeah, well, the efficiency rate against good offenses, if you go back to the best 3 offenses they've played, is not very good. In fact, if you go back to what you said, the 7, we'll call it 7 of 9 because it helps the stat a little bit. But if you go back to, it's an official possession, but 16 of 20 scoring possessions if you just go back to Miami and Clemson, just those 2 games. And I think, listen, that's way too efficient. And listen, maybe Florida State would not. I mean, Miami would have scored 36, but Florida State did get real aggressive with 4th downs in the second half. I don't think they punted at all in the second half. I think there were at least 3 4th down opportunities they went for, did not convert. Obviously, at least 2 of those created very short fields, short-ish. It was on Miami side of the 40, outside of the 50, but like 45-yard line, 46-yard line. But yeah, certainly, they didn't have a couple of their series did not have very far to go to score, and they scored very quickly. And of course, now they were very methodical about it. They had an 11-play drive covered 55 yards that lasted over 7 minutes. I mean, they were very methodical. But Mark, you've had a chance to go back and watch the game, or maybe you haven't. I know you were listening to Mike Norvell's press conference. We're going to get to that in a minute, but you have had 48 hours at least to sit and think about what you saw on Saturday night. So what's changed? What do you feel better about? What do you feel not so great about?
It still sticks with me that Miami never got out of first gear. They weren't sweating us. And to me, I said it Saturday night, that's really the biggest insult of all, is that they are just like, we score 14, we're done. Really, just don't get hurt and don't put the ball at risk and don't do stupid stuff. I mean, that was the most stress-free game, that I think Miami probably ever played against us for sure. We did not rattle. We did chase around Cam a little bit. He had some throwaways. The big explosives weren't there, but I mean, I go back to, what's more insulting, a big play, where a quarterback throws a great ball, or just taking 11 plays to go 55 yards and jamming it down your throat. I mean, that's a lot worse to me, and then just the total ineptitude on offense. And a lot of that is young quarterbacks, but a lot of it is, I think, poor execution up front, obviously. I think, just thinking back to the things that we make mistakes on are just such fundamental things, like, not setting the pass protection right and stuff. I was thinking about that today. I was talking to Fish today, talking about it. And, Maurice Smith, Rob Scott, and he's been here for a little bit now, Byers, those guys should be able to look and set a protection. Maurice Smith especially. When I coached here, I had Clay Shiver reading single safety, dual safety as a redshirt sophomore. He was setting protections, along with Charlie. He would point out the mic and set the protections, and everybody on the same page, and it was all good. So having a rookie quarterback really, to me, is not an excuse. Maurice Smith should be able to stand up and say, here, you got that? Good. Okay, boom, let's go. And it's stuff like that just kind of makes me wonder, what exactly is it that complicated? It's not that complicated.
We got 3 seniors on inside of those guards. You got Robert on one bookend, and then you got Jeremiah on the other. You got Maurice in the middle. All those guards should have to do. And by the way, Keandre Jones played a bunch too. It just wasn't like Otto didn't play at all. So you really got early as your only young guy. Now Rizzy's been around, and something tells me that a guy from Harvard's probably not going to have a hard time remembering protection rules. Just call me crazy. And listen, I think they're looking for answers, because all we heard from the previous 4 years was what a luxury it was to be able to rotate offensive linemen in and out. There was never this conversation about consistency or camaraderie or whatever you want to call it. But now we've heard this talking point brought up multiple times this season to where we've never heard it before. And the bottom line is the offensive line, and you can say what you want about the 133 yards against this team and 162 yards last week against Duke. But if you go back and look at where most of FSU's yards came from on the run, it was off scramble plays. And I'm sure the PFF staffs will back that up. I have not looked at them yet, but I would almost guarantee you that more than 50% of Luke and Brock's runs were total rush yards were on the off scramble plays. And then listen, those kids were running for their lives. It didn't matter what they tried to do; they couldn't do it offensively. And most of it is not about the quarterbacks, but most of it's about the offensive line. And listen, I think there's I don't know why Lawrence Toafili doesn't get the ball more. That's frustrating to me on the offensive side of things. He got 6 carries in this game, guys. 6 carries. 1 reception, 2 targets. So they tried to get him the ball a total of 8 times in this ball game. He's your best offensive player. So it's not only the play that's still baffling to me, which the offensive line is it is what it is at this point. And they need to play Lucas Simmons a little bit and start getting him ready. But listen, I was baffled by the lackluster play on the field, and I'm confused by some of the coaching decisions that are going on with guys like Toafili.
I think the LT of it all, I'm not going to say this is by all means all of it, and by no means saying I agree with it. They've been playing from behind basically all season. They had 22 plays in the first half of that game, and then they were in a 17-7 hole that felt even bigger than that, and they barely ran the ball in the second half. The runs were almost all the QB scrambles. I think it's just how they've been living this year, but it doesn't excuse. You're right. Find other ways to get LT involved. If you're not handing LT the ball off, line him in the slot, do other things with him.
Yeah, that's my point. I don't care if you.
No, I agree with you. It takes away some of the run game you can do with him, but it should not take away what you can do with him.
I mean, you don't even have Cam Davis, who was your second. You thought you was your second best back, and you don't double Toafili's touches. It's just another mind-blowing observation that I can't wrap my head around, because I think we all agree that he is their best offensive skill player that's not a quarterback. And listen, let's talk a little bit about the quarterbacks, guys, because I think that's what a lot of people are talking about. And I know that we all three had something written or said about it. I think even within hours of the game being over, they went to Luke in basically the first possession of the second quarter. Might have started in the first, but I don't think so. I think he came in the second quarter. But if he did, it was the last
third series.
It was early second quarter.
Yeah, so it was the first series of the second quarter. By all accounts, it looked like he was going to roll with Brock, and he said as much to the ESPN sideline reporter, and I didn't hear exactly what he said, but he made it clear that they were still going with the true freshman. Then you go down 29-7, and it was 4:28 to go. You roll Brock Glenn back out there. I think there are a lot of reasons for it in my head. I can make up some reasons for it. What I'm having a hard time believing is it's not done for the worst reason I think you could do it. Listen, both quarterbacks need reps, but this game was over at 29-7. Brock has more time in what you call your 2-minute offense or play from behind offense, which is what they were doing. They were throwing the ball. So either he thought that's legit, and he thought that he was going to try to get back in the game at 29-7 with 4:28 to go and not being able to stop Miami at all in the second half. Or he was trying to keep Luke from getting hurt, which I don't believe. And thirdly, what I think he might have been doing is trying to figure out a way to keep these two guys on the field for as many games as he can, and then, sell them on both coming back for the spring to battle out for a quarterback job. So what is y'all's take? I know y'all have some of the same questions I do.
Well, I think at that point, I think you're right. I think running the 2-minute offense, I would imagine Brock is probably more proficient at that. The other thing is, I think we reached a point of diminishing return at Luke in the course of the game. I mean, he started out obviously making plays and whatnot, but I think the last couple series, I mean, there were some errant throws. It looked like he might have, started to regress a little bit in the course of the game. It kind of started, he started seeing things maybe, and I think that was part of it too. I think, I mean, Luke was definitely thrown into the wolves and produced, for several series. But those last couple series, I think it started going south a little bit and needed to freshen up, maybe give Brock another shot. That's kind of what I saw.
Yep.
I think you can make the case for that. I think, like what you said, the bottom line, though, I think he is trying to keep them both happy. I think he sees it as, and it's probably true that if Luke just finishes out that game, that's a message to Brock of like, well, am I still the starter? And like, he is still the starter on the depth chart. But what we saw from Luke, and I don't want to put too much into the touchdown drive as a whole, like especially the QB sneak play was a pretty weird, fluky play. Like I'm not giving Luke too much credit for
Great
that.
effort, but it wasn't.
Hey, I'm giving the credit to Sam Singleton, who kept pushing him. I'll tell you that, and got him past the whole Miami defense.
To encapsulate this offense in one stat, the tush push averaged 20 yards a carry. It was our best play of the night.
A play that was designed to go exactly 3 feet.
And the longest run of the year, and I think their second longest run of the year is Kyle Morlock's fake punt last week.
It is.
Right.
It is.
So, like, I mean,
it's fascinating offense.
His three drives in the second half after the touchdown, they were 9 for 29 yards, 6 for 33 yards, and 8 for 30. There wasn't a dead duck drive in there. It wasn't like totally stagnant, but I think Miami somewhat adjusted to him. I thought he made some plays. The throw to Dukai was great. The rolling out fine back to Lane and Thomas over the middle was great. But
that fourth down throw to Morlock was really nice.
Yes,
yeah, it was
yes.
nice.
That was a great find. I wonder if it looked like maybe a first read, hoping it would just and it was a great ball right where it needed to be. But then Brock came in and Brock had a great ball to Amari Williams. I mean, the game's over effectively, but Miami's still playing rotational players. I think even some starters on the field. It was not against third string Miami players, and that was a great ball to Amari over Kiko Malgoa. So I think I think it is very much trying to keep both of them happy, and the hope that you have both of them in the spring, 100%. I don't think Mike wants to go out of the season making it clear who the starter is. Easier said than done, but I think that is absolutely Mike's goal.
Right. Yes. And listen, and I don't think that he wants to bring in a portal guy. And I don't think he has to if he can keep both of them on the roster. Now, if one of them leaves, obviously that changes his thinking, but we'll wait until we get there to see what happens. But yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how he ends up. As you said, Kurt, he's got Brock listed as the starter. I think probably all four of us thought there would be an or next to those two guys, if not flipped, right? Because I was a little bit surprised it wasn't flipped, but you've got Brock listed as a starter, and as Mike said 3 weeks ago, it's just a piece of paper. The week will play itself out on who plays. So, but all right. So I think there are a couple of fascinating questions. First of all, now Luke's been in 2 ball games, if I'm correct, maybe 3, but at least two. All right. So, and these questions are not all going to be answered by Mike Norvell or anybody on that coaching staff. Now, do they want to play Luke in more than 2 more games? Does Luke want to play in more than 2 games and retain his red shirt? So listen, I know this. There are conversations that take place like this between families and coaches, right? I mean, it's a very real thing. Now, I think, and we talked a little bit about as our philosophy would be, if you're Mike, you play him the rest of the year, because if you redshirt him, you redshirt him from somebody else. But I'm not sure that's going. Well, we're talking about down the road.
No, I understand. I think it comes down to what does he and his family want in a season like this. If they want to keep playing him, you keep playing him. If they want the red shirt, you let him have the red shirt. I think in the spirit of you're trying to keep both those guys, you want to keep him happy and do what he wants to do.
Yeah. So I think it's gonna be fascinating. I think that you still have 3 years to play for. If you're not going to burn the red shirt, I would play him against good people. I would keep him out of Charleston Southern and play him in 2 others.
He's got 2 games. He can play 2 more.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I would let him get some experience against big time opponents if you're only going to play him in 4.
I think I agree. I think you could have Trevor Jackson, even some of the scout team guys, probably play late against Charleston Southern.
Yeah. Mark, how would you do it if he was going to play in 4? or how we want to do it. Look at it from Mike's perspective and maybe the family's perspective.
Well, yeah, if the plan all along was to try to redshirt him, I mean, what's the status of DJ Uyunglele? I mean, how soon before he gets back, right? If he comes back later, you could play him North Carolina, Notre Dame, maybe Florida, one of those three, two of those three, and you may have DJ back for potentially the last two or so, right? So you still have options. If DJ is projected to come back, then go ahead and use him for the next two, and you can keep him as an emergency in case something happens and you get to your third quarterback. If it's a situation where you can win the game, if it's not, put in Jackson. So that's kind of how I'd look at it. It all depends on what the status of DJ is.
He's still wearing the cast. He still was Saturday, FYI.
Yeah, I know, but
no, but that doesn't mean you're right for sure.
Yeah,
I was more letting people know in case they didn't know. Like he is still in the cast. He doesn't seem especially close, but
I mean, and if he's not going to be available, then I think you got to have a frank discussion. Like you can't go into the season with just end of the game with just two quarterbacks. So you're gonna need them, and if there's not a lot of separation between him and Jackson, maybe you make him the third and make him the emergency and have that situation. I think those are all plausible scenarios.
Bob, Kurt, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think we've seen to some extent Luke has the highest ceiling of Luke and Brock discussion. I think people have asked about Trevor Jackson. He's running with the scout team, so he's not running with the ones or the twos. So you really can't get a good feel for what he's shown in practice. I know people are curious about Trevor, but of course it's not to that point yet. I'd be very curious to the quarterback discussion. Does Mike Norvell say, to the guys, hey, I won't bring in a transfer quarterback, but I need to know you guys are committed. You guys are staying. This is part of the quarterback room. You got Tramell Jones coming in. He's coming off an injury. Who knows when Tramell is going to be able to throw passes in practices or whatnot. You need to have a quarterback room that's ready to go. I would not bring in another transfer quarterback, period, moving forward. If that were something that somebody was asking or thinking, is that on the table?
Yeah, well, we've had it suggested on the show before. So.
Unless there's a Cam Ward. I mean, if you have a shot at a Cam Ward type player, you shoot your shot.
Is it Cam Ward coming to Florida State coming off this season?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. If you have a chance, you should.
If it falls in your lap, absolutely, yes.
I mean, you get a difference maker if you can get a difference maker.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting.
Never say never, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think if he dips in the portal, they probably both dip. Would be my concern. I would. I listen. I think it'd be great for Florida State if both of them came back because I don't think this is. I don't think there's been a clear difference maker. And I will say the one thing that impresses me about both of them is they're both tough. They're both tough and they play hard and they make things happen in their ball game. They just don't have a lot of help right now, and that's the big thing. I mean, the drops were better, I guess, this week. You didn't see as many as we have in the past. But they just don't get a lot of help, whether it's blocking or by any couple of Florida State's runs would have gone for much bigger gains if the receivers were blocking downfield, and they still struggle with that. And both those kids are not getting much help. And then listen, we'll talk about a little bit about this when we come back from break. But we're going to talk about Mike Norvell's press conference today, and we're also going to talk about the balancing act that are going to be these next 8 weeks. So we will dive into that in about 45 seconds. We're going to take a real quick break here from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with the second half of the Osceola Seminole Sidelines.
Thunder Dan Marley.
Yeah, here goes your Maori.
Hey, Seminole fans. Alumni Hall is your ultimate FSU shopping experience and has moved to a new location off Timberlane Road in Tallahassee. Shop FSU gear from Nike, Champion, New Era, Yeti, and more. Alumni Hall has Seminole gear for the entire family, plus accessories and gifts. Spend $150 and you'll earn $10 off your next purchase with their Hall Pass rewards. Stop by their new location on Timberlane Road near REI or shop anytime online at alumnihall.com. Alumni Hall, where Seminole fans shop. Finding an experienced lawyer you can trust is crucial. With over 50 years of combined litigation experience, the attorneys at Mowry Law Firm are dedicated to providing our clients with exceptional legal services, focusing on car and trucking accidents, premises liability, and wrongful death. Call 904-824-7799, MowryLaw.com.
Hello and welcome back to the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. I am Pat Burnham, and I'm joined by Bob Ferrante, Kurt Weiler, and Mark Salva, and we're talking a little Florida State football on a Monday night. Guys, we just kind of reviewed the game on Saturday night, and obviously talked a little bit about Luke and Brock and how that all played out on Saturday against Miami. But Mike was in front of the press today. I think we heard a lot of coach speak, as we normally do from any coach around America, to be quite honest with you, as I listen to press conferences on a daily basis. But I think, I think he was asked some very tough questions today, questions that I think guys like Kurt and I think Corey was the other guy that asked him, waited till it was about appropriate to start asking him. And when you see what's going on around college football with coordinators getting fired, several over the last week, including one today. UCF fired its defensive coordinator, Ted Roof, and then you've got another head coach that was fired today. Bloomgren from Rice was fired, a Tallahassee native, by the way. But listen, a couple of the things that Mike addressed were the balancing act, and I think, Kurt, it might have been you that asked this question, kind of how you approach from this point on through the end of the transfer portal, really. But you got a lot of things going on for Mike Norvell right now and his staff. They got 4 games to coach. They've got, and as Mike said, and as Matt Brown said today, winning and losing are the only things that really the fans are concerned about. So the fans want to see a couple of wins on the board before the season goes out. You've got 11 recruits that you got to try to hold on to and find some more after you lose C.J. Wiley last night to I don't know where he's going, Georgia, LSU. We'll find out shortly. You got, and as we'll talk about this, you got staff changes potentially coming. That was addressed today. You've got portal attraction, portal retention, and a portal attrition. So there's a whole lot of it's a 3-pronged thing with the portal. But listen, I did thought for the most part, as far as I thought Mike emoted better than he did last week. I did think he seemed to be not as down. I'm not going to say positive because I don't think he was positive. When you talk about something, what he says, the record sucks and all those things, but he was not positive, but he seemed to be, I'm not going to say upbeat, just not as down as he had in press conferences prior. I'll start with you, Bob. What was you were in the room, kind of what was your read on the energy and what Mike had to say?
Okay, compared to his energy last Monday after the Duke game on his coach's show, his energy was non-existent. So this is more reflective of head coaching energy that needs to be instilled in the players, to the fans, how you message things. I thought he took roundabout ways to provide answers to the toughest questions that were presented today. I think it would have been appreciative if he just directly says what he's thinking, what he wants to do broadly. He's never going to say anything specifically. I'm of the belief that Mike Norvell is not going to make any in-season official coaching changes. He might do something unofficially within a practice, within a game, things like that. But I don't think we're going to see any major change until after the Florida game, in my opinion.
Yep.
I agree with that, simply because I think you don't really see position coaches fired in season. You see a coordinator. You've seen a couple coordinators across college football. And that's just, I mean, I don't know if any of us think that Adam Fuller's defense has been at that level. I mean, frankly, I don't think it's been that worthy. I mean, Ted Roof's defense at UCF has been awful. Like, I think they've allowed like 37 plus points the last 5 games or something like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, offensive wise, Mike's the play caller. So, like what would do it? What would make a move on an OC in season do in that regard?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, but no, I agree. I thought it wasn't direct, and it still wasn't probably the answers people wanted, but it was something. And I thought he you can sometimes see when tough questions come up out of nowhere, you can sometimes see a coach not take that well, handle it with defensiveness, handle it with anger. Mike didn't, to his credit today.
Yeah. Listen, I thought he handled it pretty well. I mean, he could have glared, and he has a tendency to do that sometimes when he's angry, and he didn't do that. I thought he answered about as he goes, I think end of season, evaluate all aspects of it. He said he's always done that. I agree. I keep on going back on whether when the changes happen, it'll be either the Sunday after the Florida game or the Thursday after early National Signing Day. Now, I think if a kid wants to come to Florida State, he's probably coming because it's Florida State and Mike Norvell. I'm not as caught up in the assistant still being there, but
well, look, a lot of these things happen when, especially around a coordinator, if things are not going well, things have gone south, when a head coach is like, hey, I'm taking over play calling, or I need you to change something, do something that they don't want to do. And there becomes some tension there. And then he goes, you know what, if you can't execute my plan the way I want it done, I gave you your chance to do it your way. It didn't work. I want to do it my way. And if they can come to agreement to do that, that's usually when those breaks happen, right? So with Mike being the offensive coordinator, essentially, and play caller anyways, it's his offense. There's probably no pushback in that regard. And as far as, my impression is that Adam has full run in the defense, and, unless Mike turns around and says, I want you to do this more, and Adam's like, no, I'm not doing that. And that's when those kinds of things happen. Assistance is a totally different deal. Unless the guy's unless there's somebody waiting in the wings that could take over, there's no use in severing ties at this point right now anyways. So you're always evaluating. He knows, I think he's pretty sure he knows what he's going to do. And he meets with Alford pretty regularly during the week, and they've probably already had their discussions. And and you and I both know about this time of year, especially in November, other coaches are talking, and people are being reached out to and meeting in secret locations, and talking on untraceable devices, and et cetera, all that stuff is going on. So we'll find out soon enough.
There's no doubt these hey, let me step out of the staff room for a second. I need to take this call.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
We've both been there.
100%. And look, it's just as cloak and dagger as you think it is.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you. I think there's a plan in place. I think there's I think that he probably has already got a very definitive idea of what he's going to do, and Lord knows the gossip rumor mill has already started on this. Staying, going, whoever, whenever, we don't know. I think there's some. I think you can look at the positions that are playing well, and listen. I don't think Mike is a fire in the middle of the season. That does not strike me.
Relationships are real important to him.
Yeah, that doesn't strike me as his personality, and I don't like. Listen, he's had him here for a while. He could, if he wanted to make changes, he could have made them before this year started. So I don't think it behooves him, and I think the other thing is, I do think it can. I've said this before. I think it could really hurt a assistant coach's career to be let go in the middle of the season. Right. And I don't think that Mike's that type of guy. I think he will at least shoulder the responsibility of, I'm going to ride this out with the staff that I came into this year with. We'll see what happens after. But yeah.
And look, every except Surtain has been with him from the very beginning. That's no way to end and sever a relationship with somebody that has at least walked with you to this point. They deserve the dignity of finishing out the year and trying to win some ball games. And to your point, Bob, too, about a youth movement. You got to keep one eye on this. That December thing too. Winning games and getting some results and showing progress is important too. You need to be able to go in living rooms and say, yeah, I know we started out in a bad spot, but look how we got better. Look how we improved. We ended up winning the last X number of games. That's important too. So, a wholesale youth movement, although can be beneficial for the future, the future is now. I mean, rosters turn over at in a single portal window, and being able to attract some good players. And Mike said it in his press conference, we need to attract elite players, right? We need difference makers. I mean, I watch Georgia and I see KJ Bolden running around knocking people out, looking like Derwin James, and I'm like going, dude, that guy would have been nice. Right. I mean, we had them, you think of those kind of difference makers that we seem to have on the hook that we never seem to reel in. Those are the guys we need to be retracting. And unless we start showing progress here late in the year, that could be in jeopardy a little bit, our ability to attract that kind of talent, because that's what it's going to take. Now, if we're to the point where, that's a pipe dream to get those kind of players, we still need to show improvements to get some good quality football players so we can maybe next year position ourselves and show improvement. And just like he did in the beginning, right? Went from 3 wins to 5 wins to 10 wins to 13 wins. We got to start that process over again, because we're at one. Hopefully we can get to 3 or 4. I don't know. But if we get to 3 or 4, maybe next year get 6 or 7. And you know what I'm saying? So, it's important that we produce these last few games and, find a way to score points and defense, don't quit.
Yeah, listen, I think he kind of addressed the recruiting end of it, because he talked about the fact that, there's opportunity to play here right away. And I think he was addressing not only high school recruits, but I would think that this message is definitively being addressed to transfer portal possibilities as well, because he turned this thing around largely because of a lot of great portal players. So I think he was talking, but he said the opportunity to play is going to draw some people to us, and it may push them, and the performance on the field may push others away. But what he is, he doubled down. Listen, I've done this before, right? So, I think that was one of the more confident statements Mike has made in the last 2 or 3 weeks at these Monday press conferences. It was said in a very positive manner. Hey, I've done this before. We've taken great players and turned this thing around. And listen, it's going to be a big act. I mean, it's going to be a big
ask.
Big month. And I mean, I think they've got to retain the kids that they got committed. They can't afford to lose another one, because that's just another portal player you're going to have to go in and get at this point, right? And what we've already known is that everyone's adapted to the portal, right? Everybody except for Clemson's fine with dealing with going into the portal, and I'm sure that when it comes right down to it, Dabo will end up going in the portal for some kids too. But so the portals, you're probably not going to hit as many home runs, right? Because it's diluted. The players are. Everybody's got money. Teams in the ACC have money, some more than others, but certainly the Big Ten, SEC, they're going to be portal shopping. So, I do think it's important that they hold on. And listen, they got two official visits this weekend with the defensive end out of Texas, Toby Hostrop, and then the wide receiver that is committed to UCF, Javon Boggs, is supposed to be here this weekend as well. So, they're still getting some good-looking recruits in here, but they need to finish off that strong. They need to retain as many of the kids that are committed now as possible. And then, listen, I think it's going to be interesting to see who enters the portal from Florida State and who enters the portal at other schools, right? And where these guys have connections from, who entered the portal at Florida State, recruited out of high school and got close home but didn't get the signature coming out of high school. I think that's going to be fascinating to pay attention to. But I think that whole I've said it before. I think that between December 4th and December 29th, guys, I think with all the stuff that Mike's going to have going on, I think that's going to make or break his long-term future here. What do you guys think?
It's hard to argue.
Yeah, I mean that's obvious. I mean,
yep.
They don't call me master of the obvious for nothing.
Right. I mean, no, I didn't mean it like that. But the ability to, again, procure talent and develop talent are two of the primary things that dictate the success of a football team. This staff's ability to recruit and evaluate talent has obviously proven to be, at least in the high school front for sure, right? I mean, we've talked about that. The guys that come out of the portal, it's a little easier because they've, played college football. You can talk to friends, people within other programs. Is this guy a worker? Is he not a worker? How does he do? All that kind of stuff. So it's a little easier probably to evaluate a portal guy. But one of the critical things Mike has to get right this time around is getting guys that can evaluate and recruit talent. Good players make good coaches, and that's the single act. When I said I was going to go into coaching, every coach I ever talked to that I played with at Florida State, that's the first thing they told me. Good players make good coaches, and you figure out a way to get good players. And that's just so true. And we can't afford to miss. Our margin of error is really, really small at this point. And Mike's right. He has done it before, and he seems confident. Obviously, to me, he has a plan. He knows what's getting ready to happen. It looks like he's kind of set his jaw, and he's getting, he knows he's got to rebuild this thing a second time. But in the meantime, I said it again. We need to show some progress. The biggest thing that you can do as a coach is win some games so you can win trust. Players come for a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is they trust what you're saying. And you got to build relationships so that player trusts you. And so when you're sitting there saying the future is going to be better here, you better have some evidence of it, and you better have a relationship with a kid that he trusts what's coming out of your mouth, right? And so that is so critical. And up to this point, obviously, we've made some mistakes, and Mike said so at his press conference. Some things they thought they had, things they thought they were going to be able to do, they couldn't do. And that's a problem. That's a big problem.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, you can't afford another anything close to this in a row. It needs to be much better next year. It's not going to be immediately back to. I can't fathom. I shouldn't say it's not. It's hard to imagine getting right back to like 9 wins, but it needs to be much more respectable than this.
They need to go to the bowl next year. They need to show market improvement with the ability to turn over a roster. Yeah. And some of the young guys that we have, if we can retain them, that's going to be key too. You got to re-recruit the whole team, right?
Yes.
And there are some decent examples this year of, Pitt's had a pretty remarkable turnaround from 3-9 to what are they, 8-0. Indiana, that's the new coach, but like Pitt, same coach, pretty remarkable turnaround with the new OC. Who else? Indiana with Signetti, BYU has had a pretty remarkable 1-year turnaround. Miami has had a pretty more remarkable 1-year turnaround. 100%.
Colorado.
And given Miami, I think a lot of it's the QB. Not all the QB, but a lot of it's the QB.
A lot of it's the QB and the running back. The running back's pretty damn good too.
For sure.
But look, defensively, they were nothing really that special. We can't block them, but that's just because we're us. But that's not a Georgia, LSU, Alabama defense.
Their secondary is not great.
No,
Florida State just wasn't prepared to take advantage of it.
Not at all.
Yeah, I could see them getting exposed in the second round of the playoffs if they make it to the playoffs.
Clemson might.
They're lucky they don't play Clemson. I don't know who. Miami's got Duke this week, right? I don't know who they have left, but
their schedule is really easy. But not having Clemson, but if they play Clemson in the championship game, that's going to be a knockdown drag out. Cam Moore, they might have to score 50.
And their schedule's weak enough, and we know how the SEC and Big Ten are treated. There's a world where 12-1 Miami gets left out.
Yeah.
If they were to go 12-0 and lose Clemson, there's a world where 12-1 Miami gets left out.
Please.
It would be some up-ins for how that fan base was talking last year about a certain stuff.
Please.
Did y'all hear Mario's comment where he slammed the desk after the game, where he's talking about the trajectory of our program? He was essentially taking shots at, I guess, Florida State, and UCF.
That's fine and dandy, but as Bob wrote, does Mario not remember what Florida State did to his team down there 2 years ago? 45-3, a 45-3 beatdown. They can swing fast. I'm not predicting
how quickly he forgot.
Mario is better set up for success long term because he is recruiting high school well. But I don't know who's going to be their quarterback next year.
Oh, I'm sure there'll be.
Can we not talk about that anymore?
We could be done.
I'm sure there's somewhere in the portal. Hey, listen, the good news is, and there's always good news. We're going to play again at 3:30 under blue skies with a team with Tar Heel blue on, and you know what Florida State does just about better than anybody else in college football?
Beat Mac Brown.
Beat Mac Brown. So there's still one streak that we can keep alive for the FSU fan base this weekend if you're the Florida State football team. You beat Mac Brown. Now, unfortunately, I listened to Mac's press conference today, and he feels like his team played its best game of the season against Virginia. I think they blew them out 41-14. Now, I don't know how good Virginia is, to be quite honest with you. They're better than they were last year, but I don't think they've played anyone particularly tough this year. But listen, they did score 41 points. They did hold them down to 14, and he said the same thing that Mike says. Most of his team's problems this year is what they're seeing on the practice field is not translated to Saturdays. So I guess everybody gets the handbook that says that's an answer when you're struggling, because Mac said it. He goes, a lot of our issues are the same, and that the ability of our players is not manifesting itself in our overall record. But they are 4-4. And I think right now Florida State would crawl over hot broken glass to get to 4-4. Listen, what do you guys make of this weekend? How do you think this, there was a lot made of the bump you get from playing a rivalry. Now, it was not an optically bad loss, not compared to some of that we've seen. But, you do have to sustain some of that, I guess. Now, I know Mark's not as – I know you had some issues with effort last week, but how do you can they play with the same, I guess, intensity this week that they did last week, because now it's not an opponent. It's an opponent you're used to beating. Now, granted, they have not played North Carolina that many times when this group of players has been here, so maybe that nullifies that out. But what are you guys expecting from them? I know we didn't see them today. We'll see them.
Is not being 1-7 not enough?
What's that?
Is not being 1-7 not enough?
Well, it would be for me, Mark, but we're not asking about. We're asking, what do you? Yeah. So, what do you think?
I would think that should be enough.
Okay.
If you look on that scoreboard and you see 1-7, and that doesn't light a fire, it should have happened at 0-1. Be that as it may, if 1-7 doesn't do it, I don't know what to tell you. You need to find something else to do.
Yeah.
That's if you're not that competitive, if you're not competitive enough to do everything in your power to turn this thing around, then I don't know what you do. Now, everything I hear is that the kids are still practicing hard, and attitudes are still whatever. There's not a lot of chippiness and whatever. I don't know if I believe that or not, but but be that as it may, you playing at home, what else do you need?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. This is an interesting. I'm curious your thoughts on this, Mark. Omar Graham said after the game, kind of like we're still practicing the same, like it hasn't changed. And we're out there twice a week. I for the most part agree. Like I haven't noticed a huge uptick in chippiness. They haven't gone about things differently. They've brought a similar energy. He sold that as a good thing. Can you make the case that's a bad thing? That they should be upset. They should be practicing it a different way because of how this season's gone, and that maybe it's not a good thing that things haven't changed?
I'll answer your question with a question. What's the definition of insanity?
The same thing over and over again. Listen, Kurt's on the Jerry train, because Jerry and I were talking about that last Monday at practice, where Jerry goes, I was excited for a while that they were still practicing the same way they always practice. And he goes, I changed my mind. They're not pissed off. And he goes, I wanted to see a little bit more anger. I'd like to see a fight or two during practice because they're over it, and maybe a little bit more vocal leadership and holding each other accountable in the practice.
100%.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think. Listen, I think it's a game they got a chance to win. I don't think this North Carolina any team could show up. Listen, when you give up 50 to James Madison in a half, this may be the defense that can solve FSU's offensive problems.
You don't want to get into
nobody's buying
basketball game against North Carolina. You don't want to play the shootout with them.
We want a free throw contest.
Their numbers are interesting. They're like sub 100 in like passing yards allowed, in passing yards attempt. They have 25 sacks. Now, given they had somehow 10 sacks in that Virginia game.
Yeah.
So they had 15 sacks in 7 games before Saturday. So, yeah, I don't know entirely what to make of that.
Yeah.
We'll have to look at it and see what we
It's
think.
going to be interesting. Hey, before we go, I know we got to go because Mike's going to air in about 7 minutes. I know we want to give everybody a chance to go jump on streaming of his live call-in show. But let's talk about something that's not Florida State football related, but college football related, because I just was the Mike Elko comment after the. Have y'all heard this yet? The Mike Elko
right?
quote talks. Anyway, Mike Elko is being interviewed after his team's dominating win of LSU on Saturday night, and he goes, "We back up our actions. We're very honest. We're very open, and this is a real program. It's not fake. It's not a politician running this program, talking fast and BSing everybody. This is a real program." Now, I am confused as who he was taking a shot at. I thought it was Jimbo until he said politician, and then I remember they played LSU and Brian Kelly, and Brian Kelly doesn't talk as fast as he took over LSU because he now has his slow Southern drawl that he's gotten. So who the hell was Mike Elko talking about? Both of them? One of them?
It doesn't have to be either or. It could be a both and.
He walked it back today, by the way. He said, like, people took that to mean I was talking about Jimbo. I wasn't. I think he kind of said, like, I wasn't talking about Brian Kelly. I mean, keep in mind, he worked for both of them. He was Jimbo's DC for 1 year at A&M, and he was Brian Kelly's DC for 1 year at Notre Dame. So he has quite a bit of experience with both of them. I think he kind of said it wasn't about either of them, but he more definitively said it wasn't about Jimbo than it wasn't about Brian Kelly.
Yes, and Aaron Rodgers didn't have anything to do with getting Robert Saleh fired. Come on,
fair.
He was talking about one of the two of them.
I would lean Brian Kelly because that's who
I would too, because Jimbo's a lot of things, but he's not a politician. I mean, if he would have said
that's true,
I'm not a tyrant, I would have thought Jimbo, but he did not say that. He said politician, which reminds me a little bit more of Brian Kelly than it does.
Right. Jimbo notoriously is not going to work the room and suck up to power brokers.
Well, anyway, I just found that conversation or that quote fascinating. I've not got a chance to research more of them, which I love to do, but I got busy. There was 49 minutes of Mac Brown to wade through to try to get about 8 quotes. And he talks very little about Florida State, Bob. You're going to be so disappointed when I send you the file. Like it was mostly about almost all about the Virginia game and some other things. He got into some social media stuff and how the media gets the AP preseason rankings wrong every year and how they don't hold their own feet to the fire for causing some of this. Anyway, not a lot about Florida State, but I will send you what I have. But all right, guys. Anybody got any parting words of wisdom for the fan base or listeners before we go? Like what we're working on, maybe what we got online.
I broke down the 3 tough questions Mike faced today. There was the one about kind of like, I know you have 4 games left, but how much are you already looking ahead to 2025 roster building, which he said they spent some of the bye week doing. And I imagine they always kind of spend some of the bye week doing that. I don't think that's unique to this year, but it does feel telling that he was willing to talk about it because we're not normally asking about in-season changes to his staff and about if he would be willing to potentially give up play calling this offseason if the right situation presented itself. And he, I would say, kind of gave a non-answer to that, and that he said he'll evaluate all things. He's not going to come out and say yes, but he also didn't say no. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I think that he might give, if he does indeed hire a new offensive coordinator, I think that he might give him more input, but I don't think at 42, 43 years old, Mike's giving up play calling duties.
Unless he hires Bobby Petrino.
Oh, that would be.
Oh, no, fish. Sava, we've been through enough. I just called you fish because that was a fish thing to say.
That's the only way Jimbo did it, right?
I mean, maybe we went through that with Jimbo of how many years of Jimbo talking about, maybe I would do it, and Jimbo never doing it. But I think the case can be made. I will say personally, I don't think, and I wrote about it, I don't really think Mike's play calling's been the problem this year. I think if he had better players, there've been open plays. That being said, with how bad things are, I think you can make the case that he could stand to take a more overarching role over everything, a more CEO role, and not be so involved in one aspect.
Well, I can tell you who don't want to hear that. It's the defensive coordinator.
Nah.
Stay over there on your side of the ball, buddy. I got this. I got this. But yeah, listen. I think that I think Mike's. I think he'll get to a point in his career where he trusts somebody enough that he'll turn it over to him. I just don't think that time is now, and I think he may cede some control to try to get a guy in here if that's what he decides to do. But listen, at the end of the day, no matter what he tells a new hire, if they come in, they start struggling against Alabama, I can tell you who's going to be calling the plays. It happens. It's happened just about everywhere I've ever been, where the offensive coordinator at some point loses the play calling duties to the head coach, who's an offensive head coach, and that's just the way it works. But yeah, anyway, all right.
With Kendall Briles here.
What's that?
I believe it happened with Kendall Briles here.
Yes, it did. Yes, the famous Wake Forest story where Willie told him that he didn't know what the play was called, but he wanted that play with two receivers over here and a guy over here. And yes, I remember hearing that story post game. I was shocked to no end that Willie, an offensive coach, did not know the name of the play. But yeah, we'll see what happens. All right, guys. Well, listen, I know we're getting ready to run out to see listen to the Mike Norvell show or Inside Seminole Football. So we will be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. with Fish and Nick, possibly JP Peterson, to talk a little bit more Florida State football, some more recruiting updates. We'll get into CJ Wiley a little bit and who Fish and Nick think might be some guys on the radar, including Javon Boggs to replace Wiley in the class. And obviously, we'll also talk a little bit at Florida State, Miami, Florida State, Duke. But please go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com to check up all our updated information, including Kurt's column. Mike Norvell feels tough questions about the offseason, his FSU future. Then we've also got updates from Mike, Alex, JP, and Adam. We got video of their press conferences, and of course we will have more tomorrow after practice, including our live practice updates. But we will see you tomorrow on Seminole Sidelines. Everybody have a great night.
Go Noles.
I love it that you still do that, Mark.